back for a moment to spring of 2020. Much of the world had ground to a halt, which meant that people weren't driving. They weren't visiting friends or going into the office or hanging out of the passenger side of their best friend's ride, trying to holler at me. If you left your home at all, it was probably to take a sad walk around the block. I mean, at least until you heard someone cough down the street and then you ran your ass back inside. Now, because of all of that, that meant that America's oil industry, which had been producing more than any country in the world, basically shut down. And even though society has ramped back up again, the oil industry hasn't.
Early in the pandemic, demand for gasoline dropped dramatically as workers were told to stay home.
That immediately walloped the oil and gas industry like nothing ever in its history has ever hit them before. At one point early on in the coronavirus crisis, the price of a barrel of oil, it cost less than $0.
When prices dropped abruptly with the pandemic shutdown, U.S. shale producers dramatically slowed the drilling of new wells. Rigs were taken out of service, and oil production in the U.S. dropped off significantly.
They shut down production. They laid off tens of thousands of workers to try and stay alive during the pandemic.
Just like everything else in our lives, the oil production has been impacted by COVID. You can't just flick a switch at a refinery and operations and have everything back to normal.
Yeah, one of the reasons gas prices are so high is because America is making less gas than it did before the pandemic. Because people may be driving again, but that doesn't mean that it's easy for gas producers to just instantly produce as much as they were before. You gotta grow a whole new dinosaur and then smush it until the oil comes out. That takes time. And it makes sense that it's gonna take them time to adjust. I mean, it's been hard for all of us, right? Every single one of us. It's been hard for us to get back to normal life after the pandemic. Do you remember the first time you had to make small talk at the office? Nobody knew what we were doing. Welcome to the elevator. Do you remember weather? Yeah, I do. Not? My wife is leaving me. This is not my floor, but I'm getting out. Now, if America isn't making enough oil to keep up with demand, then why doesn't it just buy more from the rest of the world? Well, it could, but it turns out the people who control the oil in the rest of the world, well, they just don't feel like sharing.
Gas price is really not being driven up by the demand on the horizon. It's really more about the supply. Oil-producing nations are actually constricting the supply a little bit because they're trying to recoup their pandemic losses.
There's a cartel that controls the price of oil internationally, and that cartel is called OPEC.
OPEC, the biggest oil-producing nations, aren't increasing the amount of oil they release into the global economy. So as demand rebounds in the U.S., Americans are paying about $16 more to fill up their tanks than a year ago.
President Biden recently appealed to OPEC and Russia to boost production, but received a flat no.
Wow, they received a flat no. I mean, to be fair, every no coming out of a Russian is a flat no. Have you ever talked to a Russian person? They're never afraid of a flat no. Hey, are you having a good day? No. Well, there's always tomorrow, right? No. And look, you can understand OPEC's position. I mean, how much longer is oil gonna be around, right? They need to make money on this shit now, before we're all driving Elon Musk's cars that curse out Bernie Sanders when you honk the horn. And by the way, you also know what this means, right? You realize that this is the first time America could openly go to war for oil. Because usually when America goes into the Middle East, it's always like, this isn't about oil. My son is going over there to fight for freedom. But if prices go any higher, now Americans can just be like, Kevin, you get your butt in that fighter jet because your dad is not paying $6 a gallon. That's my steak money.